This YouTuber girl is about to ask her best friend for a most challenging experience, climbing a 2,000 feet high TV tower. However, what comes next is something the girls would have never even imagined, compelling them to think that they've made the worst decision of their life. Let's go a little back in time to see what went wrong with these girls while climbing this 2,000 feet tall bad boy. The story opens with a rock climbing scene involving a young girl, Becky, and her husband Dan. They seem quite enthusiastic about their experience and helping each other while enjoying their dare-defying activity. Becky's best friend, Hunter, is also a part of this and is quickly making her way to the top. While manipulating a particularly tricky opening, Dan is startled by a bat flying out of the crevice he was holding onto, disturbing him and losing his foothold. As Dan hangs in the air, his body connected to his harness, he tries to swing back with Becky's assistance, but falls to his death. 51 weeks later, which means 1 year later, Becky's life is a mess. Swallowed in grief and resigned to alcohol, Becky often tries to talk to Dan using his voicemail because she is still not ready to accept the heart-wrenching reality. She has distanced herself from her loving father because her father did not trust Dan to be good enough for her. He is deeply concerned about his daughter's mental health and makes extreme efforts to convince her to move on with her life, but Becky is completely against him and doesn't even listen to him. She goes back home and once more dials Dan's number in grief, and also tries to commit suicide using her sleeping pills until she receives a call from Hunter. She is visited by Hunter immediately after, who tries to console her and suggests that Becky accompany her in climbing a 2,000 feet tall TV tower, situated in the desert. It would serve a dual purpose of both spreading Dan's ashes once they climb to the top, and providing a cathartic experience for Becky to gain closure on her loss and fear. However, Becky is not ready to confront her fears and responds with a cold rejection. The next morning, Becky glances at a photo of her with Dan, which builds up her confidence, and she eventually agrees to climb the tower with Hunter. As they drive towards the tower, Becky notices a guy's hand in one of Hunter's photos, but Hunter lies to her by saying that he was just a random guy. They stop at a restaurant for dinner, and as the story progresses, we learn that Hunter, the adrenaline junkie, has now become an Instagram influencer and also has a YouTube channel. The climbing of the tower is the latest in a long line of crazy stunts she is executing to attract fame and satiate the adrenaline junkie within her. During the dinner, Hunter teaches her to charge her phone by connecting her charger to the leads of the lamp and using that as a power outlet. As the girls get ready to drive the next morning, Hunter begins recording a video for her YouTube channel. She is not paying attention to the wheel and nearly avoids collision with a truck. They keep driving towards the tower and arrive to the location, but cannot pass the gate because it's locked. Thus, they start walking toward the tower while recording the video, where they come across a pack of vultures picking up a half-dead coyote. As they shoo the vultures away, Hunter shoots a picture of the dead coyote for her Instagram. The girls soon reach the foot of the tower, where Hunter continues with her video footage and informs the audience about their crazy stunt of the day. Becky is not happy to see the tower in reality and once more begins to lack her confidence. Unfortunately, Hunter manages to convince her, and they start climbing the internal ladder, which is approximately 1,800 feet high according to the movie. It is obvious to them that the ladder is shaking, but the girls are not paying any attention to it. As they keep climbing, the skylines begins to shake, resulting in shaking the whole tower. A ladder step breaks and falls, which is not frightening at all. Becky almost backs out due to nerves, but Hunter convinces her to keep going. There are shots signifying how rickety the entire structure of the tower is, and how the screws connecting the ladders and holding them upright are precariously close to unscrewing themselves, due to the pressure being exerted on the steps. After climbing halfway up the tower, they take a moment to rest and drink some water. Hunter claims that they have climbed almost 1,000 feet, and they can also see that restaurant from this position. They keep climbing and climbing for some time, eventually reaching the end of the internal ladder, which leads to a platform. Becky finds it extremely difficult to face this, but that Hunter junkie is enjoying the moments. From there, they must climb another 200 feet until they reach the top of the tower. As Becky and Hunter climb up the ladder, unbeknownst to them, one of the bolts comes loose. Hunter reaches to the top and helps Becky in doing so, as more bolts are coming loose. The girls finally make it to the top of the tower and discover a whole new experience of seeing the world from the top. They take selfies and make videos for YouTube, and also use Hunter's 4K camera drone to take some amazing distant shots. Hunter then hangs herself in precarious position and asks Becky to take some pictures with that drone, which is a sensible thing obviously. Once she's done, she challenges Becky to face her fears and do the same. Though reluctant at first, Becky eventually agrees and hangs herself in the same position with Hunter's assistance. Becky is thankful to Hunter for all her efforts and remembers Dan in grief. At this moment, they decide to spread Dan's ashes, which they have brought in a box with them. An emotional moment that hit both Becky and Hunter hard. Hunter begins to cry harder than Becky, causing the audience to anticipate that she somehow had a strong bond with Dan than Becky. Let's leave this mystery for later. Finally, they decide to start climbing back down, but as Becky starts to climb, the unscrewed part of the ladder comes loose, causing the entire ladder to topple and fall to the ground. It also causes Becky to drop the bag containing their drone and water bottle on top of one of the satellite dishes attached below. Hunter tries to pull her up, but loses the grip at one point. In her second attempt, she manages to pull Becky up using the harness, and they begin to laugh like nothing happened. After a moment of happiness, they look down and realize that the ladder is gone, which raises a very interesting question. Did they not realize it earlier? Anyhow, stuck at the top of the tower, Becky and Hunter cannot find a signal, thus rendering their smartphones effectively useless. They also find a flare gun and binoculars in the compartment at the base of the tower. After a moment, Hunter notices a large gash on Becky's knee, presumably caused during earlier incident. Hunter takes off her shirt and helps her to stop bleeding by making a tourniquet. They decide to wait for help to come, because Hunter is positive that someone might have heard the ladder crash. Meanwhile, Becky records a video footage in which Hunter explains about the tragic incident they faced some moments ago. During the video, Hunter says that she did everything because of Dan, causing Becky to suspect something wrong, but she ignores it anyway. After waiting for 5 hours and realizing that no one had heard the ladder crash and no one was coming to help them, the two tried to search for help via their binoculars and saw a trailer parked up near the gate. They planned to lower the phone a couple of feet so that the phone could regain signal, which would send an already pre-written message via Hunter's Instagram. She uses the rope to lower her cell phone and tries to bring some reception with the help of that satellite dish. In an attempt to lower the phone even further, Hunter hangs herself from the remaining portion of the ladder, but still fails to regain any signal. After failing, they finally decide to drop the phone by putting it in one of Hunter's shoes and reinforcing the shoe by padding it with Hunter's sports bra. The logic is that the phone would regain the signal while falling and send the message. The phone successfully reaches the ground, and they are now just hoping that their plan is going to work out. However, the phone breaks and even a dog belonging to one of the trailer park men sniffs the shoe and finds the phone. The girls notice the man and his dog and scream to grab his attention. Becky then throws both of her shoes to the ground, which is noticed by the man, but he doesn't look up at the tower. He throws the shoe away and returns to his van. The girls finally decide to wait until dark before launching the flare from the flare gun in order to grab their attention. When they are ready, Becky fires the flare, and Hunter uses the phone's flashlight to successfully attract the guys. Unfortunately, instead of driving the trailer to help them drive up to the gate, the men stole the car they had parked there, further disheartening the girls. Becky and Hunter start getting hungry and dehydrated. As charged emotions flare up, Becky watches a video of her and Dan's wedding and notices Hunter's gloomy face in the video. She also notices a tattoo emblazoned on Hunter's ankle, which says 143. This compound forces Becky to confront Hunter by revealing to her that Dan had trouble proclaiming he loved her, choosing to say those 3 numbers instead. Hunter admits to having had an affair with Dan for 4 months, initiated by Dan after a drunken encounter. It forced Hunter to distance herself from Becky after Dan's death because she had broken off the affair with Dan, as she valued her friendship with Becky far more. It also makes clear that the guy with Hunter in one of her pictures shown earlier in the movie was actually Dan, and Hunter's overall emotional connection with Dan was because of her affair. They keep talking about this up until the following morning, as we see Becky sobbing in a burst of emotions. Having ruefully acknowledged that the phone is broken and no one is coming, Hunter decides to climb down to the satellite dish and try to retrieve the bag containing the water and the drone. Using the harness, she lowers herself to the top of the satellite dish, but is unable to reach it. She then sets the harness loose to swing and manages to jump to the other dish and retrieve the bag. Although she managed to jump down, she now has no option to reach up to the rope. Hunter uses the selfie stick to reach the harness and manages to reach up by jumping off the dish. As she starts climbing up, Becky pulling her from the top, she appears to slip and fall to the dish at 9.8 meters per second square. Becky, terrified, manages to peek down and sees her still alive. Albeit her hands are profusely injured, but Becky manages to pull her up. Becky then tries to deliver a piece of paper using the drone to the motel, where they had stayed the night before. As the drone nearly reaches the gate, the battery starts running out, which forces them to retrieve the drone before it falls to the ground. Becky once more loses hope, but Hunter tries to calm her down. Later at night, Becky wakes up and finds Hunter missing from the platform. She also finds vultures flying around her, and after finding Hunter dead nearby, she wakes up screaming, revealing this to be a part of her nightmare. Remembering Hunter's trick of charging the phone via the lamp leads, Becky decides to climb up to the port where the tower's night light is attached. They wait for the sunrise, and Becky starts climbing the port. Her wounded leg is already starting to smell, but she manages to climb up the pole with considerable effort, unscrew the light with her shirt, and connect the drone's charger with the leads. However, the charger is not long enough to reach the lead, so she uses her marriage ring as a conduit upon Hunter's instructions, and the drone begins to charge. As the drone charges slowly, Becky holds on for her life throughout this time, barely dodging the vultures smelling blood from her wounded leg. Finally, after the drone is charged, Becky climbs down to the platform, and they decide to send the drone when the motel is the busiest, which is 10 a.m. While waiting, Becky soon starts to lose herself from delirium and dehydration, almost falling from the platform. Hunter tries to provide Becky with moral support by talking about wrestling, a hobby which only Becky enjoys. When it's finally 10 a.m., the girls attach the piece of paper to the drone and fly it over the gate towards the motel. But, as fate would have it, and as a callback to a previous scene in the first act, a truck crashes into the drone and destroys it, shattering her hopes of ever sending a message. The man gets out of his truck, but doesn't give any attention to the drone and drives off. The girls are once more left hopeless and have nothing to do but wait. She finally asks Hunter for her other shoe, so she can drop her phone and ask for help. Surprisingly, Hunter coolly replies that she doesn't have the shoes because she isn't here in the first place, and a big frightening gash on Hunter's face is shown. It is then revealed that she died when Hunter slipped and fell into the dish earlier. Becky had only managed to pull up the bag. The Hunter, who had been helping Becky throughout the rest of the events up to this point, had been a figment of her imagination. It does make sense, as the Hunter, who had been at Becky's side after climbing back up to the platform, had been more cautious, trying to provide Becky with moral support by talking about wrestling, or how Hunter convinced Becky to climb up the tower to connect the drone's charger to make Becky manage to survive. A stormy night rolls around, leaving Becky completely convinced that she has just a few more moments to live. She remembers her father at this moment and starts recording a final goodbye message for him, in which she says that you were right about Dan and everything. She apologizes for not believing him, and a lightning suddenly strikes the tower, but we only hear her scream. The following morning, we see Becky still sitting unconscious on the platform. One of the vultures flies down and rests on the platform. Inching closer to Becky's leg, it starts to nibble at the flesh. Waiting for that moment, Becky manages to capture that vulture by the throat and bash it, killing it. She then starts eating the dead vulture, thinking of it as survival of the fittest. After eating it to regain strength, Becky finally manages to connect herself to the harness and pull herself down to the dish where Hunter's dead body lies, half mangled by the impact of the fall. The vultures tear apart her stomach, exposing it further. The vulture nibbling Hunter's flesh looks up at Becky's bloodstained face and flies away, realizing there is another Hunter. Becky, weeping with grief and whispering that she loves her, types a message to her father and inserts the phone inside Hunter's shoe. She then stuffs the shoe in Hunter's exposed stomach and then pushes her off the satellite, sending her all the way down to the ground in the hopes of sending that message. In the next scene, we see Becky's father driving towards the tower and reaching the base to see police cars and paramedics already present. His heart sinks when he sees a dead body being carted off by the paramedics, thinking of her as Becky. However, he finally sees Becky calling him from a nearby ambulance, and they have a tearful reunion. She says that she is going to be fine, and the movie ends with Becky's voiceover saying that life is too short, so you have to do something that makes you feel alive.